I was organizing the basement when I found the box. Old cardboard, tape yellowed by the years, no markings on the outside. My first reaction was to throw it away without opening it. After all, I was in the middle of a forced move, leaving the house where I raised my children for a smaller apartment after the company offered me early retirement. The last thing I needed was more nostalgia, but something made me open it. Inside, I found things I didn't even remember keeping. Movie tickets, a restaurant menu, a faded t-shirt from the 1989 marathon, and then, at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper that crumbled at the touch, a class ring, not mine. Hers. Margaret Hayes read the engraving inside the band. 1988. My breath caught. I hadn't thought of that name in... how long? 15 years. 20. I'd lied to myself saying I'd forgotten, but holding that ring proved otherwise. Some things are etched so deep, they become part of your bone structure. I sat there on the dusty basement floor, rolling that ring between my fingers, and suddenly I was 26 again, newly hired by the magazine, working 16-hour days, trying to prove myself, sharing a tiny apartment with 2 roommates. And Margaret, the radio producer, with a voice like warm honey, a laugh that lit up whole rooms, and a determination that both frightened and fascinated me in equal measure. She had given me that ring on our last meeting. "Keep it for me," she'd said. "When I come back from Los Angeles, you can give it back." But she never came back. Or rather, she did. Different. With a 5-year contract at the biggest radio station on the West Coast, eyes shining with ambition and fear, telling me she couldn't ask me to wait, that it wouldn't be fair. I had kept the ring out of stubbornness, out of anger, out of foolish hope, and then I'd simply forgotten it existed, buried under layers of lived life. I grabbed my laptop, hesitated, then typed her name into search. Margaret Hayes wasn't hard to find. She had an extensive professional page, award-winning podcaster now, specializing in true crime documentaries, 2 published books. Divorced, according to an interview I found, living in, wait, Seattle. Not Los Angeles. Seattle. How long had she been out of California, and why did that matter? I closed the laptop, feeling ridiculous. I was a 61-year-old man, about to move into an apartment that cost half of what I paid in alimony, with 2 grown kids who barely called. What exactly did I think I was going to do? Call a woman I hadn't seen in 34 years and say, "Hey, I found your ring. Want to grab a coffee?" Except that's exactly what I did. It took me 3 days to gather the courage. I found her professional contact email, started the message 7 different times. Finally, I kept it simple. "Margaret, my name is Thomas Brennan. I don't know if you remember me, but we met in New York in 1988. I found something that belongs to you and would like to return it in person, if possible. I'll be in Seattle next month visiting my sister. No pressure if you'd rather not meet. I completely understand." I hit send before I could change my mind. The reply came 18 hours later. Just 4 words. "O'Malley's Tuesday. Noon." My heart pounded. O'Malley's was an Irish pub in New York where we used to meet every Tuesday night after work. Was she testing, if I remembered? Or was it coincidence that there was a pub with the same name in Seattle? I replied, "Will there be fish and chips?" She, "And Guinness? That's too warm." Some things never change. I spent the next 3 weeks oscillating between excitement and terror. Bought new clothes, then felt pathetic. Practiced entire conversations in the mirror, then realized how absurd that was. I was acting like a teenager, and the scariest part was that I liked it. I hadn't felt nervous, excited, alive about something in years. My sister Judith noticed the moment I arrived in Seattle. "You're different," she said, looking me over at the door. "I'm older." "No, you're lit up." "What's going on?" I told her about Margaret, the ring, the planned meeting. I expected skepticism, but Judith just smiled. "About time, Tommy. You've been living like a ghost since the divorce. It's only been 2 years. It's been 5, and you were emotionally divorced years before that." She squeezed my arm. "Go. See what happens." No expectations, just curiosity. O'Malley's in Seattle was smaller than I imagined, cozy, with dark wood paneling and the comforting smell of caramelized onions. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a Guinness I didn't want, and alternated between staring at the door and studying the cracks in the wooden table. Then she walked in. You'd expect 34 years to change someone beyond recognition, and Margaret had changed. Short hair now, silver gray cut in modern angles, red-framed glasses, a few wrinkles around her eyes and mouth. But the way she moved, that liquid confidence, the slightly crooked smile when she saw me, all absolutely familiar. "Thomas Brennan," she stopped in front of the table. "You went bald." I laughed, surprised. "Margaret Hayes." "You went gray." "Silver, please." "Gray is 4 old suits." She sat down. "You look good. Thinner than I remember." Divorce is an effective diet, isn't it? She ordered whiskey, something she'd never drunk before, and studied me with those brown eyes that always seemed to see too much. "So, you found something of mine." I took the small box from my pocket and set it on the table between us. Margaret opened it slowly. When she saw the ring, something in her face broke and recomposed in seconds. "My God, I thought I lost that on the subway. You gave it to me. Remember, at Penn Station, the day you caught the train to the airport?" "No, I remember. I just didn't think you would have kept it. I figured after I didn't come back, you'd have thrown it away in justified anger." "I kept it in anger, then forgot it existed. Found it last week while packing." She slid the ring onto her pinky, the only finger it still fit, and smiled sadly. "It fits differently now. Everything fits differently now." We were quiet while the waitress brought our food. Fish and chips for me, salad for her. Some things really do change. "You stopped eating fried food?" I asked. "Heart attack 6 years ago. Nothing major, but enough to scare me straight into the Mediterranean diet." She took one of my chips anyway, and we laughed. "So," she said, "tell me, the last 34 years, in 5 minutes or less, married, 2 kids, worked at the same magazine for 28 years until they shut down print, divorced 5 years ago, early retirement last month. You're 34, married, no kids by choice, then by biology. Los Angeles was glorious for 10 years, unbearable for another 10. Moved to Seattle, started the podcast, divorced 3 years ago. I have 6 cats, which is tragically cliche, but they're great company." She took a sip of whiskey. "Those are the facts. But they're not the real story, are they? They never are. So, tell me the real story, Tommy. Why did you really want to return that ring in person?" The question caught me off guard. "I thought you'd like to have it back. You could have mailed it. Didn't feel right." "Why not?" I looked at her, at that familiar and strange face, and decided to risk the truth. Because when I found that ring, I realized I'd spent over 3 decades living a life that felt like someone else. Good husband, good father, good employee, did everything right, but I was always wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, and holding that ring, remembering you, remembering who I was when we were together. It was the first time in years I felt like myself. Margaret went very quiet. That's not fair. What? You can just show up after more than 3 decades and say something like that. But her eyes were shining. Sorry. No, you're not. You're not sorry at all. She leaned forward. You want to know why I agreed to this meeting? It wasn't morbid curiosity or nostalgia. It was because when I saw your name in that email, I immediately remembered what you were wearing the last time we saw each other. Faded blue shirt, jeans with a rip at the knee, brown leather jacket you loved. And I realized I remembered more details about you than about my husband of 20 years. Margaret, let me finish. I built an amazing career, won 3 national journalism awards. I have financial security, wonderful friends, total independence. But there's this part of me, small but insistent, that always wondered what would VA happen if I'd chosen differently in 1988. If I'd stayed, you would have hated me. Your career would have stalled, your talent wasted. Probably, but I also wouldn't have spent 20 years in a marriage where my husband and I were better roommates than partners, where I'd wake at 3 a.m., wondering why I felt so lonely next to someone. That hit me in the chest. I know exactly that feeling. We looked at each other across the table, across the years, across all the choices that led us to that moment. The pub buzzed around us, laughter, clinking silverware, low music. But we were in our own little bubble of time. I need to tell you something, she said finally. 15 years ago, I was in New York for a conference. It was April, raining, and I walked past the building where our apartment used to be. You know what I did? What? I went up, rang the bell. A young woman answered, probably in her 20s, looked at me like I was crazy when I asked if a Thomas Brennan lived there. I walked down the stairs feeling completely ridiculous. She laughed without humor. I don't know what I expected, that you still lived there, that we'd have some cinematic reunion. I was living in New Jersey then, suburban house, lawn that needed mowing, weekend barbecues. Did I do the right thing not looking for you? The question hung in the air. I don't know. I was married. You were married. It would have complicated everything. Or simplified. How so? She played with the ring on her finger. Maybe if we'd reconnected then, we'd have realized sooner we were in the wrong marriages. Or maybe we'd have had a messy affair and destroyed families. Or maybe we'd have just had coffee, caught up, and realized we were strangers now. She looked at me. Timing is everything, isn't it? So they say, do you believe in destiny, Tommy? I thought about it. I believe we make choices, and choices have consequences. And sometimes we look back and draw lines connecting dots, calling it destiny. But at the time, it's just chaos and hope. That's surprisingly profound. I've had a lot of time alone to think. Margaret took another of my chips, chewing thoughtfully. Here's my theory. We both made the right choices in 1988. I needed to go to Los Angeles. You needed to build your career in New York. We were too ambitious, too young, too in love with our work to make it work. We'd have destroyed each other trying. But now we're different. We've built our careers, we've proved what we needed to prove. We've made our mistakes and learned our lessons. And maybe, just maybe, the timing is finally right. My heart was beating fast. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe finding that ring wasn't an accident. I'm suggesting that you're unemployed. I work from home, and neither of us has a real reason to live where we live. I'm suggesting that 34 years is too long to wait to find out what we could have been. Margaret, we barely know each other now. We're practically strangers. We are, and it's terrifying. but it's also the most exciting thing I've felt in years. And by the look on your face, you feel the same." She was right. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that jumping was madness, but also knowing that standing still was a slow death. "What happens now?" I asked. "We finish our lunch. Then you come to my apartment and meet my 6 ridiculous cats. We spend the afternoon talking for real. No rush, no agenda. Tomorrow, we do the same. And the day after that, 2. How long are you in Seattle?" 2 weeks. Perfect. 2 weeks to find out if this is madness or destiny. She reached her hand across the table. "You. In." I looked at her hand. Age spots. Raised veins. Short, practical nails. The hand of a woman who had lived, worked, loved, lost, survived. Not the soft hand of the 26-year-old girl I'd met. Better. I took her hand. "I'm in." We spent that afternoon in her apartment overlooking Puget Sound, smelling of coffee and old books. Her cats, all rescues, all named after famous criminals, inspected me with proper skepticism. We talked for 6 straight hours, covering decades, traumas, joys, regrets, hopes. And on the 10th day in Seattle, as we walked through Pike Place Market, she took my hand. "You know," she said, "I spent years in therapy working on my fear of commitment. My therapist told me I always sabotaged relationships because no man could compete with a memory ID romanticized for 3 decades. And was she right? Completely. Except..." She stopped, making me stop too. Except it wasn't a romanticized memory. It was a deep intuition that I'd let the right person go. And spending these 2 weeks with you proved it. "Margaret?" "No, let me finish. I'm not proposing marriage. I'm not asking you to change your whole life immediately. But I'm saying, stay another month. Let's see where this goes. No fear this time. No ambition getting in the way. Just us, finally with the timing right." I thought about my life in New York. The empty apartment, waiting, the kids who didn't need me, the career that was over. And then I thought about waking up every morning with the possibility of coffee with this extraordinary woman. "My sister's going to think I've lost my mind," I said. "Probably. Everyone will. And if it doesn't work, then we'll have had a wonderful month and know we tried." "But Tommy," she touched my face. "I think it will. I think it already is." She was right. 2 months later, I moved my few boxers to Seattle. 6 months after that, we moved in together in a small house in Ballard. A year later, we were planning a joint podcast about second chances in life. Now, every morning, I wake up beside the woman I thought I'd lost forever. And sometimes, when she's asleep and the morning light hits her silver hair just right, I pick up that ring from the bedside table where she keeps it now. And I thank the universe, destiny, and sheer dumb luck. Because that's the thing. Sometimes love doesn't work the first time. Sometimes you need to live a whole life. Learn who you are, what matters, and what's worth fighting for. And then, if you're very lucky, you find a ring in a dusty box and get a second chance to make it right. Tomorrow, we do the same. And the day after that, too. How long are you in Seattle? 2 weeks. Perfect. 2 weeks to find out if this is madness or destiny.